Welcome back to Andersen Acres. We are going to continue talking about trailering and moving your mini horse. Today we're going to talk about making your miniature horse as comfortable as possible while you are moving him. So while he is in that trailer or the cargo van or whatever method you're using to transport him, you want to make sure he is comfortable, safe, and happy. So let's talk about how to make him as comfortable as possible. Now, ideally, your miniature horse would have a horse friend who is more experienced at traveling than he is and who can go with him on the journey. A horse that is calm, a horse that is used to getting on and off trailers, a horse that is used to driving around in a trailer, sometimes for hours at a time. Now, this is not possible for everybody, and it does have to be a horse that your horse knows. So it's not a good idea to grab some friend's horse that your horse has never met and shove them in a trailer together just because your friend's horse is so much calmer than yours. Don't do that. But if you have a pony friend and your pony knows that pony and they get along and the other pony is more used to traveling and is a good traveler, you might want to do the buddy system. It works pretty well. Regardless of whether you have a buddy or not, you want to use clean, dry bedding for comfort. The only time you would not add bedding is if you're afraid that bedding is going to blow into the eyes of the horse. So in summers and hot weather, often we have the windows and vents wide open, so there's quite a breeze in the trailer. If there's a lot of breeze in the trailer, you might want to just use stall mats instead of adding any of your traditional bedding to your trailer, just because you don't want that bedding blowing in their eyes. Some people like to use a fly mask to keep stuff from blowing in their eyes, which is a reasonable option. But still, if it's really windy or you're going to have a lot of airflow through the trailer because it's hot, then you might want to limit the bedding just so you don't get it in your pony's eyes, because that's never comfortable for anyone. So, miniature horses, like big horses, are pretty prone to injuring themselves. So if you're worried that your mini horse is going to damage his legs, you might want to consider shipping boots or wraps. These work really well to help protect your horse's legs. However, they do need to be properly fitted and properly put on the horse. If they're not properly fitted and they're not put on properly, then they can come off. And if they're loose or they come off during transport, then the horse is just going to figure out another way to hurt himself with those, because that's what many horses do. They're a walking disaster. So if you're going to use shipping boots or wraps, make sure that they are put on properly, that they are the right size, and that your horse can't get them off, because you don't need that complication. Miniature horses are a disaster. So you can travel with your horse loose or tied or contained by a divider. Those are all viable options. I prefer Shadowfax transported loose. It's just safer for him. But you can tie or you can contain him with dividers. However, if they're tied, you want to make sure they can still drop their head down. Okay, you don't want to tie them so that their head has to stay up. They need some movement, because if they can't drop their head, they could end up with a shipping-related illness. It's really hard on their lungs not being able to drop their head. They need to be able to clear their lungs and respiratory tract, and they do that by dropping their head. So if you don't give your miniature horse the ability to lower his head, you could, especially over a long journey, get to the other end and all of a sudden your horse is sick and you don't know why. It's because they couldn't drop their head. It's really important that they be able to drop their head during transport. On a long trip, provide hay in a hay net. Don't provide it loose on the floor. Put it in a hay net and hang it so your horse can access it. Roughage to keep the stomach full reduces the risk of ulcers. So I like to provide something to eat if we're going further than 30 to 45 minutes, just to make sure that he has access to food in case he gets nervous. A nervous tummy isn't good with a horse. Nervous tummies can cause colic. So we don't want him to have a nervous tummy. So because we don't want him to have a nervous tummy, I like to provide food if we're going any great distance. If it's only half hour, I don't really bother. Some people always provide food. When you're traveling with your horse, your mini, they must drink regularly. If you're thirsty, they're thirsty. Okay? If you need a bathroom break, they need a drink of water. Every single time you stop, you need to provide water for your mini. And you can't kind of cheat the system by just loading the car with a bunch of water bottles and say, I didn't have to stop for water. You know darn well the horse needs water when you need water. So if you need a drink, so do they. So you should stop at least once an hour. I like to stop more often because Shadowfax is a little butthead. But you should stop and offer water. Hydration is incredibly important, especially on longer trips. So if you are on a longer trip, you might want to use paced electrolytes. That can encourage drinking. If your horse doesn't want to drink water, consider feeding mash or some kind of soaked food. It could be complete feed or cubes or beet pulp, whatever. Something that they will eat if you moisten it, because if it's wet, then they're at least getting some moisture. Horses may not want to drink on long trips, but a lack of water equals colic. So absolutely keep their hydration up. Long trips are not great if your horse doesn't like to drink on the road. So make sure you're finding a way to get him to consume some water. It's really, really important. And last but not least, if you are nervous having your horse in the trailer, obviously you can't ride in the trailer with him. It's not safe. But you can put cameras up so that you can keep an eye on him on the journey. And I don't necessarily think you need to do that if it's a really short trip. But if you're going a longer distance, having cameras in the back so you can see what your miniature horse is up to is a viable option, and it could set your mind at ease. So do consider putting up a couple cameras if the idea of traveling a long distance with your horse makes you nervous. It makes them nervous too. So being able to keep an eye on them could set you both at ease. That's about it for us here today at Andersen Acres. We'll see you tomorrow.